If you follow any of the political debates about religion, you've probably heard the phrase separation of church and state used repeatedly. But contrary to popular belief, it is not in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. So where did it come from? Good question, and one that we're going to talk about today. According to the research conducted by wall builders, the Supreme Court first introduced the phrase in a ruling in 1947 when they declared, "The First Amendment has erected a wall between church and state. That wall must be kept high and impregnable." They were referring to the phrase separation of church and state, based on an exchange of letters between President Thomas Jefferson and the Baptist Association of Danbury, Connecticut in 1801. Wall Builders goes on to say that Thomas Jefferson had no intention of allowing the government to limit, restrict, regulate, or interfere with public religious practices. He believed, along with the other founders, that the First Amendment had been enacted only to prevent the federal establishment of a national denomination. In other words, his concern was not to keep religion out of government, but to keep government out of religion. The Baptist Association of Danbury sent President Jefferson a letter expressing their concerns that the freedom to exercise religion, as stated in the First Amendment, was listed as a government-given right, not an inalienable right given by God. Thus, they were concerned that the government would feel empowered by this and might attempt to legislate religious freedom of expression in the future. Jefferson responded to their concerns with a letter which read in part, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibition the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." Jefferson understood that the intent of the law was not to limit religious expressions, but to limit the power of government. Unfortunately, his statement was taken out of context and quoted by the Supreme Court in such a way that it actually had the opposite effect of what Jefferson intended. Does that affect your perspective of the First Amendment and how it has been distorted to discourage Christians from publicly expressing their faith? The way people use the phrase today, you'd think it was law itself. In fact, the phrase is often used to try to discourage pastors and nonprofit leaders from using their platforms for political purposes. Nothing could be further from the truth. While it is true that pastors cannot endorse or oppose a particular candidate as a church representative, they are free to endorse or support them personally, and they can also not contribute as a church to an individual candidate or raise funds on their behalf, but they can do a number of things. They can encourage and equip their members to register to vote. They can invite all the candidates in a race to speak, and not all of them have to show up. If only one shows, the church can still proceed with the event. They can even pass out voter guides and speak directly about specific issues and legislation. Yet only about 25% of Christians in America are voting. That must change if we hope to place Christians in leadership positions and ultimately to return to a God-fearing nation with laws that obey and follow God. As Kelly Shackelford with First Liberty said, pastors should not be intimidated from acting as pastors, calling their people to vote and giving them info so they can best represent Christ in the voting booth. But don't be fooled. Our founding fathers wanted to protect the religious rights of the people from the government, not the other way around.